Yes, accounts payable is about paying bills, but what many accounting, finance, and other management professionals often don't realize is that is just the tip of the iceberg. What else do they do, you ask? I'm about to explain, and there's a good chance you'll be surprised at the depth of what goes on in the accounts payable space today. Responsibility number one, paying bills. And by this we mean that when an invoice comes in, they pay the right person, the right amount, at the right time. So efficient processes are critical so that your team can take advantage of early payment discounts, they can avoid late fees, and they can do everything else that is required of them in order to get those invoices paid on time efficiently and effectively. Responsibility number two, they must evaluate payment vehicles because the way that many companies pay bills today is with paper checks, although we've made some real progress getting away from it. But today it falls on the shoulders of the accounts payable staff to encourage their suppliers to move away from paper, those paper checks that everybody is so madly in love with, and start accepting other forms of payments, primarily ACH and or P cards if it's the dollar amount is small enough. Now, this takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of hand holding because many suppliers, for reasons that I can't fathom, are married to these paper checks. They've made some good progress. I believe the numbers currently are less than 40% of all B2B payments are made with paper checks, but that's still a lot of paper checks, and we're far behind the rest of the world in this area. But we've made some real progress, and your teams should be working on it. And I don't think we'll ever get to zero, or in the next, 5 to 10 years, we'll get to zero, but we should get pretty close. Responsibility number three, they need to ensure the accuracy of those payments, okay? It's not just enough to get an invoice and pay it. They need to make sure the company doesn't spend money in ways that it shouldn't spend money. So they need, first of all, and most importantly, to make sure they don't make a duplicate payment. They need to make sure that they don't pay a fee that they weren't supposed to. So for example, if your terms and conditions say that the supplier is supposed to pay the freight, they need to make sure that the freight isn't on the invoice. They need to make sure that the pricing on it is accurate, the amounts on it are accurate. They need to make sure that the goods were received. All of this doesn't happen, in a blink of an eye. It takes a little bit of work. And if some of you are sitting there and you're thinking, well, doesn't the person who approves the invoice for payment, don't they check that? The answer is 98% of the time, no, they don't do it. It falls back into accounts payable to do that. And this is a huge issue going on right now because many suppliers, thanks to the almost no cost of sending an email, are sending invoices 2, 3, 4 times. So they have to weed out these duplicates to make sure that they don't get paid twice. And even if they're 100% effective at it and they catch every single duplicate invoice that comes in, it still takes time and effort, and nobody's giving any of these accounts payable groups extra people to handle it. So ensuring the accuracy of these payments is a huge task. And no, if you're thinking, well, isn't the invoice correct when it comes in? A good number of them are not. So it is a big thing. Responsibility number 4, they need to protect the organization against the ever-increasing number of new frauds. Unsurprisingly, criminals have figured out that the accounts payable team has access to the organization's money, their funds, and so that if they can trick them, then they can get their hands on funds that they are not entitled to. So many accounts payable departments, I would say all, but I hate to exaggerate, are being targeted now with new frauds big time. And that what they need to do is recognize them, but they also need to be educators as well. And I'm getting ahead of myself. So they need to make sure that they don't pay for something that they shouldn't, and they need to protect the organization on that front. And by the way, when I'm talking about fraud, mostly I'm talking about money because that's what we all think about, but just keep in mind that we're also talking about data. So your organization's data also has to be protected. The responsibility number 5, if you will, is they've taken on the task because being the prime target of alerting the organization to new frauds so that any changes that need to be made at a global level within the organization can be made, not just changes in how the accounts payable function operates, and they do need to change their processes sometimes because of the new frauds that are being focused on them. Okay. Responsibility number 6, ensuring tax compliance and regulatory compliance when reporting both at the federal and the state levels. This is a huge task, takes up a lot of time, especially in January when they're issuing the 1099s, but throughout the year they need to collect W-9s anytime there is a new vendor, and they need to make sure that information is correct so that your records are correct, and this way when they go to issue the 1099s in January it's correct, but also so your organization doesn't get hit with fines and penalties that could come back and bite you in the you know what if you have a big tax bill that you're trying to fight at some point down the road. They need to make sure that you have not established a pattern of non-compliance with the IRS, which is how the IRS will look at it if you have had a lot of problems with your 1099s. Okay. Increasingly now, responsibility number 7, they're using data analytics to help them uncover problems and weak processes in the accounts payable process. So they're becoming much more adept not only at using Excel, that's just the base bottom line, but also going into the accounts payable data, of which there are tons, and extracting information to help them identify where problems are occurring, and then once they can identify where they're coming, what they need to do to eliminate the problem or to minimize it. So there's been a lot of that going on, and I expect as time goes on, there'll just be more and more of it. And speaking of data analytics, the responsibility number 8 in many organizations is because they have access to this wealth of data, they are providing this information to other groups who are doing analysis. Clearly, one of the main beneficiaries of this would be the purchasing department, but there are other groups within the organization that do use this data. And in fact, I know one accounts payable director who shared that in his organization, whenever the CFO needs data for whatever analysis he or she's doing, they come to accounts payable. They don't go to somebody in finance because of accounts payable's ready access to that information. Responsibility number 9, I call this one the real headache, and that is administering the organization's expense reimbursement policy for travel and entertainment. They really take the brunt of it in this one because typically the travel policy, what the company will reimburse and what they won't, is established and approved by management and maybe some folks from HR. And yet accounts payable are the people who have to go and say, no, we can't reimburse you for this or that. And some of your employees, not all of them, some of them understand, but there's always a few who take it personally, and they will accuse the accounts payable staff of singling them out, and why are you doing this to me, and why won't you reimburse me for this? And at the end of the day, it's not the accounts payable team who made the decision. They're just given the policy and instructed to administer it. So that can be a real challenge and not fun. Okay, and now responsibility number 10, and this is expanding also for obvious reasons. They have to keep the accounting and finance groups updated on new technology, and by the way, their own team that's being developed to make the accounts payable function more efficient and effective. And there's a lot of it. Now, you might be thinking, well, no, accounting does this themselves and for their own work, and that's true. But, and this is a big but, many accounts payable functions are being automated, and they're using, invoice automation or accounts payable automation solutions that help them do a better job, and they have to work with the various other departments. And by the way, sometimes your suppliers to get them to understand, what it is that's being done, how it's being done, etc. And let me tell you, sometimes when you have an automation solution that management has determined that you'll start using, an invoice automation solution, the suppliers are not real happy about having to use it. And so that's another set of diplomacy skills, or an area of responsibility that these folks take on. Not an easy one. So in discussing these issues, you may have noticed that I'm talking about accounts payable at a very high level. Each of these areas has many moving parts. You would not believe how many they are. In fact, I sat down one day and I listed them all out, and I came out with 107. There's probably more, but I came up with 107. Now, you might think I'm exaggerating, that they can't possibly be that many different tasks. And because I thought a few people might think that, we did a separate talk on this, in which I list them all out, and you can watch that right now using the link that has appeared on your YouTube screen and is in your description. Good luck.